Hi there, welcome back to the Community of Readers video blog. We're following the Old Testament readings for the Monkey Bar Challenge, and this week we begin the book of Deuteronomy with chapters 1 to 11. This is called In Living Memory. Deuteronomy is basically a speech. It's a speech given by Moses to the people of Israel as they camp on the plains of the Jordan, waiting to invade the promised land. And these first 11 chapters are really just a big recap of all of the stuff we've been reading over the last 2 months. But more than that, they are a great example of the act of corporate remembering as Moses relives for the Israelites the story of their last 40 years. It's a pretty blistering tale. It's an act of political genius, really, on Moses' part, a masterful display of rhetoric as he recounts all of Israel's indiscretions, from the golden calf at Sinai to the Baal of Peor, to the rebellion at Kadesh Barnea, and Moses' own indiscretion at the rock of Meribah. These things are raked over and remembered. For the Israelites listening, whose parents and grandparents would have experienced this, it's still a raw memory. And Moses is driving home its importance. Because imagine that you're an Israelite at this stage in history. And before you lies the promised land, the thing to which your whole life has been geared. Behind you is the wilderness, the place which your whole family has experienced suffering over a generation. And you know that your ancestors struggled because they were too scared to invade Jericho the first time round. But now you don't have the guts to face the Anakites either. And here is Moses, mistrusted, yes, but undisputedly a man with whom God has spoken, telling you in no uncertain terms that if you repeat the mistakes of your ancestors, you can be sure to suffer the same consequences. And this isn't just about the Anakites or Jericho. As you conquer the land and spread throughout the region, if you even look at another god, or even look at another woman who looked at another god, then you can be sure that it would be better if you had never been born. Not convinced? Remember the last 40 years? Still thinking of turning away? But Moses' speech isn't just designed to put the fear of God into the Israelites, because there are incentives as well. If you keep the commands of God, says Moses, then none of your children will be childless, none of your animals without young. There will be no disease among you. It's an incredible claim that Moses makes. And as he retells this story and the last 40 years of their life is gone over again and again, they are reminded of the liberator, their liberation from Egypt, and their liberator God, who, whatever they think about this brave new world, has proven himself able. There's one thing for sure. If there hadn't been this die-hard Yahweh loyalist stream in the Israelite community, then the world would be a different place today. Such is the impact of Judeo-Christian ethics on our modern life. But as with so much of the Old Testament law, there are just parts that we have to call into question. Particularly this outrageous claim by Moses that if people keep the law, then none of them would be childless and there'd be no disease. And Jesus himself in Luke 13 is very clear that the link between suffering and sin is not as this part of the Old Testament would have us believe. But beyond that, there is something about this speech that is deeply inspiring. You feel in it the passion of Moses' conviction, the immediacy of his voice, because this is his valedictory moment. And all of the passion and desire of the last 40 years comes tumbling out in fervent conviction. This is a do or die moment for Israel. If they stray even to a little bit, then their identity could be diluted. Yahweh might be forgotten, and the law, this fantastically alternative manifesto, might be lost. Maybe every generation believes that they are at some important juncture in history. But as I look around me at the church in the Western world at least, I just see overwhelmingly a tale of decline and irrelevance. If we can't find a way to keep the story of Jesus alive in our 21st century world in a way that the people around us can understand and love, then it will just become consigned to history. There is too much at stake for us to forget. It's the sacred act of remembering, of retelling the story, that forces us to ask those difficult questions of ourselves. How committed really am I to Jesus? How much is my life directed to following Jesus? How much do I care about this story? How much am I going to let it embed in my life? Or am I going to slowly but surely decide that maybe actually I don't need Jesus anymore and I can do life fine without him? The sacred act of remembering Jesus in the Lord's Supper or in many other ways is what keeps this world-changing story alive in our lives, and what keeps it pouring out of us to a world around us that so desperately needs to feel its hope and be empowered to become part of its plotline. There is just too much at stake for us to forget.